Well, hello, everyone. My name is Rebecca Parsons. Welcome to the Thoughtworks Technology Podcast. I'm one of your recurring co-hosts, and I'm joined by one of our new recurring co-hosts, Lilly Ryan. Hello, Lilly.
Hello. Welcome, everyone.
And what we want to talk about today are designed tools that take advantage of some of the innovations in artificial intelligence that we've seen. And we are joined by two people from our product and design organization, Kate Linton. Kate, would you introduce yourself, please?
Good morning, everyone, or whatever time of day it is for you right now. And thank you for having me here. I lead our design community of practice at Thoughtworks.
And Esther.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I am Esther. I lead the community of practice for the Singapore office, and it's very nice to have us here.
Excellent. I guess what I'd like to start with is how do you all view design as part of the software development lifecycle? People think about, developer tools and all of that, but how do you see design as a part of the software development lifecycle and interacting with other roles on a software delivery team?
Well, Rebecca, I see it as a really integral part of software development. It's an essential core role. And at Thoughtworks, we try to very much work in parallel with delivery when we're designing and testing software with our users. So the process that we follow is a very tried and tested approach that starts usually with discovery and going out and understanding the people who are going to be using our product or service and the market, the competitor space. And then we work really closely with developers to understand the technical feasibility of what we're building. We test with prototypes, we test in the code, and we refine as we go. So it's really very much a collaborative effort with our product delivery teams.
I tend to, not try to box myself in by, I'm a designer, I do interface design, I do user testing, but generally, I think everyone on the team at Thoughtworks, we are problem solvers, right? So even as a designer, it doesn't mean that I can't maybe take my time to understand a bit of what a tech stack does and how it actually affects how we design certain user experiences for people. So to me, it's I don't necessarily just think of myself as, I'm just going to design screens, but I want to understand hey, where's the data coming from that I'm putting information on my screens and stuff like that. So I kind of try to, find problems to solve, even if it's just not on a user experience side. Maybe there's some technical issues on the back that might have an insight. I can bring other insights into that kind of discussions as well.
Yeah, I know when I first started in technology back before fire was invented, we didn't care about things like user experience. You basically took what you got. And if you ever watched any of the, say, airline employees when they were dealing with the old airline reservation systems, the finger contortions that they had to go through to do certain activities, it was just horrendous. It hasn't always been a valued part of software delivery, but I think it's safe to say now that you cannot have a compelling product if you don't take into account the design aspects and the user experiences of the customers. And so I agree completely. It's a very integral part of how we deliver software now.
I've also been working in the industry decades now, and so I remember those days where it was a debate whether we should start with discovery and talking to people who are going to be using the product and having to defend the need for user testing with real people, and today really customer centricity is a very orthodox approach to UI design. But it was hard won. There were years and years of debates at at the exec level to create budgets to be able to do research and testing with customers. And, it's certainly one of the risks that I see of us going backwards if we start to create shortcuts when we use Gen AI to understand our users.
So let's talk a little bit about what are the kinds of tools you all use as you go through the design process. And for those who don't know me very well, you would know upfront you would never, ever want me to be designing your user interface. I'm definitely a back-end person. So help me understand what are the kinds of tools? I mean, we're talking about AI tools for design, but before AI, just what kinds of tools do you use in your work? And then we can talk about how that's been impacted by AI.
Yeah, good question. I think tools-wise, it starts with pencil and paper. So, you don't really need a lot of tools to generate ideas, but designers typically would use tools to take those ideas and turn them into prototypes that we can test with. So that's where we've used for years products like Adobe XD for prototyping, and now Figma is really the tool of choice for a lot of designers when it comes to prototyping. We use tools like Dovetail for collecting customer research. Esther, what tools do you use?
I think it's pretty much the same, like starting out pencil paper, doing sketches. I think I deep dive quite quickly into Figma sometimes. So just kind of going in and just kind of fiddling around, trying out like certain wireframing and stuff like that, just to get quick prototypes across. So nothing like high fidelity or fancy, but just like gray boxes and a few lines to denote like images, copy, just to kind of get the discussion going with my product owners to see like, hey, is this something that would fit in the vision of where you want to take your product in? And then deep dive right into Figma itself. So I think Figma itself is really quite powerful, but I'm actually excited for their AI suite that hopefully will come out soon.
Well, you attended the Figma conference in Singapore yesterday, didn't you, Esther?
Yeah, I attended online, yes.
And I think Figma's been a really interesting one in terms of some of the tooling that they have brought into that space when it comes to how they are incorporating Gen AI. So I guess maybe that leads to the question of what is going on in this space at the moment with pencil and paper, and how are we making that smarter? Are we making that smarter?
I think it depends on the companies that you are looking at. So I can see like AI like being taken into maybe a couple of directions where when you're considering like which companies are doing it. So kind of like the mainstays of what designers actually use today, like the tools like Dovetail and Figma, their stance on AI is about helping to augment our workflows, right? So Dovetail and Figma, they're introducing like AI tools to actually help us with our work rather than trying to see, how can we actually design like a designer? So there are other tools out there that kind of democratize design in a way where I don't need you to be a designer. You can spin up like a working prototype, let's say, with minimal like knowledge about what it means to actually design something. But the AI tools that Figma is trying to introduce is something that would actually benefit designers a lot. Like I'm very much looking forward to auto-naming my layers because my Figma file is just a mess of like gibberish layers. So looking forward to that tool. And it's something that helps us, not saying that, I'm just going to click a button and here's a prototype that my product owner can just take and put in production. No, it's about like helping us to search for assets, just doing the things that I don't necessarily take time out to do with my Figma files to make it cleaner so other designers can understand like my work as well.
You spoke a little bit about democratizing design. And also one of the things you mentioned there was renaming layers as well. It sounds like that type of feature is something that we know Gen AI can do really well, but that itself is not core to a design process. That's sort of a product help or a product feature. It augments your existing workflow. Do you see this kind of tooling as something that can help people who are not in the design space to design? Do you see it as something that augments the existing professional skills of designers, or is there something about it that goes both ways?
For me, it would definitely augment me as a designer, because let's say I'm trying to find a particular layer and I kind of know what's on the layer. Let's say it's a button, but it's named like XYZ something something, and I cannot like find it easily. I have to like dig down through like certain nested layers and stuff, especially when you turn on a lot of like configurations in Figma as well, and you hide things in frames and frames and frames. So it would help me. I'm actually not going to say I know for sure how it would help people who are just starting out using Figma. Maybe it would, because it would help them to understand how to, I guess, be better about keeping their files like cleaner and not messy. So it helps them to maybe be a bit more conscious about how they're designing things on the surface. I'm not sure, Kate, what do you thought?
I think it's really helpful in collaboration, because Figma is a collaboration tool as much as it is a prototyping tool. It enables people to work in parallel and to provide feedback. And so ensuring that the things like layers are clearly marked is actually really helpful for people who are collaborating on one file. So that's creating clarity and efficiency for everyone who's involved in the design process. I'd also say that when it comes to Gen AI creating efficiencies and democratizing the design, what we're seeing at the moment and over the last year is just lots and lots of new startup products and tools coming out that are promising to do just that. And there's certainly too many to keep abreast of them all. We've been trying to. We've been assessing some of these tools and experimenting, and also comparing them with the default tools that we use as part of our practice to compare the output and to really understand where they can create efficiencies and still deliver a good outcome. So it is a really potentially confusing space for early career designers starting out to know what are the right tools that I should be using, because the well-known tools that we potentially learn when we're studying at design school, they're still, in my mind, the tools that we should be using. But for a lot of non-designers, there's so many other cheaper options now that are promising to do exactly the same thing and to do it more quickly. And so, it's a really confusing design market out there at the moment when it comes to tools. It's changing from week to week. It's impossible really to keep up with the innovation in this space.
But I wonder though if it's not so much different to when web design like first started and you had like spin-up companies that could help you to just create like, I guess, websites without really the help of a designer or knowing how to code. But web designers still exist as like a job that is out there. So I probably don't think it's as much as like, hey, here's this AI tool, it will help you become a designer, but maybe it's an AI tool that can help you to visualize like your ideas and then maybe take it to someone who can actually then help to refine your product better. So it could help in, let's say, discoveries, or maybe you're pitching a product to someone, but it's not fully realized yet, but you just need the extra help to visualize something. So maybe it helps in terms of like storyboarding, for example. We just want to get an idea across to sell it, for instance.
I was going to ask about that too, because I know in other parts of the software development lifecycle, generative AI is used to generate ideas. Give me some alternatives to this. And so I can see that being quite useful in that discovery process, or where you're trying to say, okay, what are the different ways I can morph this base idea and, maybe come up with something better. Are you seeing any tools like that, or is that just something that you might do with one of the large language models, one of the chat interfaces?
Yeah, that's a good question, because ChatGPT can actually do all of that you just described in terms of facilitating ideation through, coming up with multiple ideas and scenarios and pros and cons for different scenarios in different industries. So we're already doing a lot of experiments in that space. But we've also, Thoughtworks has created Gen AI tools like Boba, and more recently Haven. And Boba was also created with that goal of helping teams in ideation and strategic options for new products and services and evolving existing products. So we've been playing around with that tool and sharing it with our clients in facilitated workshops to really be. I kind of think of it as having a really great sparring partner when it comes to coming up with new ideas. And we all know the creative journey is littered with bad ideas. Most ideas, bad ideas, and a lot of the ideas that are created by Gen AI are no different. They're not going to work. But it's great to at least kickstart that process and get past the blank canvas. And it does create a lot of efficiency. So we've certainly been using those tools, and there's still a lot of hard work in terms of the discovery process, but the tools certainly help in really kickstarting the process, but not reducing the need to then go and validate those ideas. And the hard work of doing customer research still needs to be done with real people. So it doesn't really eliminate that work. It just creates some efficiencies when it comes to exploring new ideas and looking at the pros and cons and thinking about, even what competitors are doing. Those tools could be useful for that as well.
You touched on using this as a sparring partner. I have found that to be one of the best ways to engage with this type of tooling, as a kind of interlocutor, to have a back and forth and use it to evolve your own ideas as a bit of a sounding board. In most cases, that can be beneficial because you, as a professional with your knowledge, can evaluate what comes back to you and shape the output from there. Especially with that chatbot paradigm, I think it's been a pretty helpful thing regardless of your discipline. And in terms of what you're talking about regarding the work of interviewing users, there have also been a lot of offerings out there that are aiming to automate some part of this, or say, well, couldn't we just generate users and we could get input from them in that sense? Because we know here are the breadth of things that users might or might not want. We could synthesize that. What are your thoughts on how well that fits within your practice, and whether that is a complement to what you're doing, or whether that actually sort of distracts from the value of the work that you're bringing to the table?
Synthetic users and products that simulate users and create personas is probably one of the most divisive areas of Gen AI tools in the world of research. So you'll get a lot of mixed opinions for and against the use of these tools. We've run a few experiments internally, and I think, those tools can be great in formulating what we call a proto-persona. So it's like a straw man persona that requires further validation. And typically and historically, we would create proto-personas using subject matter experts or proxies for the user who have a lot of knowledge and experience with target users of a product or service. But it doesn't eliminate the need to then go out and meet those people who are using your product and test those hypotheses with them and do that further work. So I don't see it yet as being a substitute for talking to real people, but it can certainly be a great kickstart into the process. And with some of these tools, they also allow you to upload your own customer data, which is also a great starting point. So, Synthetic Users has that ability. It's got, apart from 4 large language models that it's built on, it also has a RAG. So that means that organisations can upload their own customer data and ensure that there's accuracy in the data, that it is representative of the segments that their customers have. So I think there's certainly a role for it, but my fear is that that some product companies will see this as a substitute and a shortcut, and it really isn't. At this stage, our customers are the most valuable part of our products, and you need to be having a continual dialogue with them, testing out new ideas and continually improving based upon that real-time insight. So, so I see that it's potentially going to be a part of our research, but it won't replace it.
I think it's probably a bit dangerous to say I can completely replace my real people research, because you got to understand the product that we're designing, right? So the products that I work on in the Singapore office are sometimes systems that are quite internal, and it's not something that I'm going to openly talk about in public. And that's what these kind of synthetic users do, right? They crawl a lot of information that's available publicly on the internet to kind of improve or train their data sets. So if it's a product that is not going to be talked about on the website a lot, or it's not going to be reviewed publicly a lot, where are you going to get the insights from? It's going to be still locked within all your users and their knowledge of certain tools and stuff and products that they use. So I'm pretty sure for very niche user bases, you're probably not going to find this kind of users, this kind of synthetic simulations very useful, unless we go down the route of we actually build our own synthetic user for our own use. And that's going to take time. And we're going to have to do the research anyway to go and build out this prototype persona. So I think it depends on maybe fine-tuning the way we use this kind of personas, because if it's something that say, hey, I want to understand customer feedback around the world for a global product that I'm working on, sure, I can use it to maybe crawl insights from all over the world on the internet and bring it to me instead of having to do desk research hours on end to crawl for that same information. But if it's information that's not going to be available publicly, and I have to actually go talk to a person to understand how they actually use a very particular product, then that's a very different story we're talking about.
One of the core concerns that we have at Thoughtworks around designing accessible products is ensuring that we take a universal design approach to accommodate all users of the product and incorporate the diversity that exists within any segment. So that requires designing for the edge cases. So designing for those niche users that may have a disability, that or even the 50% of your segment that probably wear glasses or have other requirements that won't be sufficiently represented in a large language model, which is generalizing and not always delivering some of those niche requirements that are represented by those edge cases.
I think I also want to add, like, the hallmark of what makes a truly great user researcher is the ability to, like, tease out, like, certain insights that are, like, hidden nuggets. So we're having a conversation and then suddenly the person you're interviewing, like, says, like, something maybe in passing. But if you're a good researcher and then you can identify that, hey, actually that mention can actually lead to, like, certain insights that haven't been discovered yet. So we're able to kind of, like, observe and understand, like, hey, maybe there are some other insights that could be unlocked just because the user mentioned something that they may not think is important, but it could reveal something that is totally relevant to where we're trying to take a product or research. And I'm not sure if LLMs can actually do that. Like, they are very linear and, like, their discussions, hey, here's a discussion guide. This is a list of answers I want answered. So they're just going to go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And when talking to, like, a user or just simulating, like, how a user would answer questions. But human user researchers, we would actually say, hey, wait a minute. You said something here around question 2. Can we deep dive into that and go further? It might be a tangent that leads nowhere, but it could also sometimes lead to something amazing.
So as designers, and given what you know about the powers of AI, I will use that phrase, even though it drives me nuts. What's your dream tool? What is a place where you would love to see AI used to support your work as a designer?
I guess my dream is just having a tool that gets rid of all of the repetitive, annoying drudgery involved in customer research and testing and analysing results and finding the patterns in the data. You know, that seems to be what Gen AI is perfect for. I don't want it to replace the fun stuff, though, the really exciting work of ideation and the flow state that I get into when I'm designing. You know, I could easily lose an afternoon designing something that I really enjoy working on. And that's the reason why I'm a designer. I don't want a tool to take care of the really enjoyable part of my job.
Yeah, I agree with Kate there. Like, sometimes just the fact that if we go analog, it could yield some interesting results as well. We were running, like, a workshop with some of our clients a while back, and one of our activities we had was to do ideation, but we tried to get them to contrast between results that you get with pen and paper, like Crazy 8, versus, let's say, using Boba AI to come up with ideas. So sometimes we come up with similar ideas to AI, but sometimes we have, like, left field ideas that are, like, super wild and creative. I don't know what it would get us, but it's something that only the human imagination can dream up of, because it's something that maybe never existed in the thought bubble of, like, a very general averaged internet data. So sometimes interesting things can come out if we just sit down and just let our minds wander. But to Kate's point, like, a lot of repetitive work that sometimes just takes, I guess, time out of our day. Like, let's say I have to go clean up my design system in, like, Figma, for example. I might have to hunt down, like, where all my different components might be used. So right now, today in Figma, I can't just go to the design system and say, hey, there's this component, I made some changes. I want to make sure that the changes get propagated everywhere, because sometimes there's a glitch. It might not happen like completely, or if I have changed or overrode certain settings for a particular component, it might not get the change propagated for that effect. And with AI, I think Figma is promising that we can actually be able to search where all these like components might be used. So that would save me so much time if I'm trying to make sure that my production files are actually kept like clean and up to date, and I'm not missing out like some very special component that I might have like made special changes to.
So we talked earlier about junior designers and the potential impact of these tools. But if you were talking to someone just out of design school, or who was interested in getting involved in design and wanted to explore the use of AI, where would you have them start?
Probably advise them to start learning about prompt engineering and start with ChatGPT and really understand the importance of being able to define the outcome that you want from that tool. And there's a bit of work there, and I'm still learning how to write good prompts, but it's a really good starting point for designers to really begin with understanding what's the outcome that you want, who's the audience, what's the goal here, what are the constraints that we're operating in, what's the context. Now take all of that and put that into a prompt and start there, and then refine and refine until you get the outcome that you want. So I would start with prompt engineering. I know that a lot of designers disagree with me because a lot of the tools out there have almost eliminated the need to be good at prompt engineering. They provide interfaces that kind of help you to think about that. But I think it's really useful to understand the way these AI-powered tools work. And if you can improve your prompt engineering, your prompting skills, then that will go a long way to understanding how to get a good outcome out of Gen AI tools. And ChatGPT is a handy way to start. You know, it's a tool that a lot of us have in our pocket or on our laptop. So I would start there.
I kind of want to challenge Kate a little bit though. Like you said about like understanding how to prompt better so you can achieve like the outcomes that you want. But whether or not someone who understands what a good outcome is, I'm not sure if AI can necessarily help us with that. Like knowing what good is takes years of training experience to understand what's a good like UI design, what is bad UX. It's trial and error. Like we learn as we go along. That's why we do user research, we do user testing. We bring it in front of people to understand that, hey, I designed this particular user flow, but people are having issues or difficulties understanding how to use it or complete it. Then that's where I say, oh, okay, then I need to make some changes to this. And if you just get AI to fast track and just speed up and say, hey, I just want this app to do this, it spits out a prototype and you say, okay, that's done. But how do you understand where all the issues like lie? Do you understand what decisions the AI actually made for you throughout this, let's say, prototype? So I'm not sure if there is like a magic bullet to just get to the point where, oh, okay, I have these AI tools. I magically know like what a good outcome is, or I trust AI so much that I just assume that it's giving me the best outcome that I can achieve with my prompt. So I'm not sure if there is a quick way like to help people understand good outcomes. I think there's still value in training up like through proper design principles and practices. Like don't discard like the grunt work. Like maybe you use AI to do some prototyping. Maybe you also do it like manually on your own to learn and understand like, why did I place certain elements in this order? Is it important that something comes first or something comes on the next page? Like, how does everything work with regards to like all you're designing? I think that's also important as well.
Oh, yeah. Prompt engineering is never going to replace design school. So it's interesting, actually, because it's a really good point. And some of the most beautiful outcomes that I've seen from Gen AI have come from super experienced designers who have been working in the industry for years and really can recognise good design when they see it. And they're able to use Midjourney to create extraordinary images, but it's only because they've been creating images in their own practice for years, and they're using their own style and their own skills to allow a Gen AI tool to augment what they do. And so that recognising good design is that there's a huge risk there for non-designers using these tools, that they're just going to produce a lot of very ordinary stuff. And we've all seen that. You open Instagram and have a look at a lot of the Gen AI that's created there, and it's very ordinary. You can tell that it's boring.
The word augment that you use there, I think, is really key to what we've been talking about this entire time, that it can elevate a level of skill that you may already possess. And at the same time, also, you do need to understand where your core principles are in order to know how to guide and to shape whatever you're getting to an ideal result. I wondered also with regard to development teams who don't have a designer on staff. Design is not always the first role to get filled. With access to tooling like this, and potentially also with a small budget, particularly if you're just starting, it may be that people on development teams are asked to perform the role of a designer, as they frequently are, without the requisite training and skills. What kind of advice would you give to development teams without a designer on staff who have access to the kinds of tooling that we've been discussing into how to use it effectively?
I would always start with the design process and design thinking, and trust the process, which it doesn't change just because there's Gen AI tools to help. But the process really begins with understanding your users, understanding the market, understanding and synthesizing the results of those interviews that you do. And you don't have to be a designer to go out and do discovery and test your hypotheses. And you don't have to be a designer to validate ideas and improve them as you go using that design thinking approach. And Gen AI doesn't change that. It just creates efficiencies and augments it. And we see opportunities through the whole software development lifecycle to include Gen AI. But I would trust the process of design thinking, even if you're not a designer.
Yeah, it's not something that's like a very special skill set that you have to be a designer to do. Like, design thinking is about like understanding problems to be solved, right? And what's maybe like a good solution to solve them. Maybe designers have like this instinct to just get like those insights maybe quicker, or just like know how to identify like, okay, where are all these like opportunity areas maybe just quicker, and hone in on like what's good to solve and what's maybe necessarily not the most value or effort to solve. So I guess we also augment the teams in that way, of the way that we think, and just because we are just more attuned to the design process because that's what we do day in and day out. So we are practiced, and it's not that they can't pick it up. It just might be something that might just be a bit like more difficult for them to do at the very early stages. But through time, they would also learn and understand that it's not something that is very unique. Like anybody can practice design thinking.
So I would say in summary, you and other designers are not in any danger of being put out of business anytime soon, given where the AI tools sit today. And who knows what's going to happen in the future. But I do think, in particular, a lot of what you've been talking about with the interaction with the customers and the user research, those are the kinds of things we humans are better at than machines. And we can be empathetic, and we can, make leaps that perhaps are more difficult for an AI system to make, at least at the moment. So it sounds like you guys don't have to worry about being put out of a job by automation anytime soon.
I'm not worried, but what I would say, and what we hear is true for a lot of different roles, is that we could potentially get displaced by designers who are effectively using Gen AI tools.
Yes, I think that is quite true across a large number of roles. Well, thank you, Esther. Thank you, Kate, for joining me and Lilly in this discussion of AI tools in the design space. And I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.